Will I get scurvy doing the carnivore diet? Are carbs required by the human body? I heard that meat causes type 2 diabetes. Is that true? Today, we're going to answer all of your carnivore diet, metabolic health, and disease-related questions so you can lay some of your fears to rest and have a better understanding of carnivore in general. I'm Jenny. I've been on the carnivore diet for over a year, and I've lost 42 pounds. I've been recording my progress through weight measurements, continuous glucose monitoring, DEXA scans, blood work, and arterial scans, and I've been sharing all of these results with you here on YouTube. And over the past 14 months, I've learned so much about metabolic health and the effects that carnivore can have on your overall well-being. I've listed out all of my references in the description below, so if there's something that I talk about today, you can learn more about it just by clicking on those links. And of course, I am not a physician, so please don't take any of this as personal medical advice. Let's dive right into these questions. This first question I get literally every single day. Can I get enough vitamins and minerals if I'm only eating animal products? And the answer to this is yes, it is definitely possible. This was actually one of the things that I was most concerned about before I started the carnivore diet. So I have been testing my vitamin and mineral levels meticulously over the past year, and I have stopped worrying about it because they always come back good. Eating a well-rounded carnivore diet, so all meat, all seafood, eggs, butter, some people include dairy, and throwing in the occasional organ meat can help you get all of the vitamins and minerals that you need to thrive. And if you want, I actually think this is a good idea to do at least once a year. You can do some blood tests to make sure that you're getting enough vitamins and minerals. I'll link where I get mine done in the description below. The next question is, won't you get scurvy without the vitamin C from fruits and vegetables? The answer is no, you will not get scurvy, but let's dive into that a little bit more so you can understand the mechanics behind it. First of all, what is scurvy? Well, scurvy is an extreme version of vitamin C deficiency. Symptoms start with fatigue, weakness, irritability, and sadness, and then they can move into muscle and joint pain, bleeding gums, you can even lose teeth, red or blue spotting on the skin, and bruising really easily. When most people think of scurvy, they're thinking about sailors or pirates or something like that. And what sailors were eating was preserved meats. They were not eating any kind of fresh meat. Preserved meats, preserved fruits and vegetables. They were also drinking a lot of alcohol, smoking, both of which can lead vitamin C levels to be even more deficient. A modern day carnivore diet is not remotely similar to what these sailors were eating, and scurvy does not occur with a well-formulated carnivore diet. Another thing to note, when you're not consuming any kind of carbohydrates, you actually need less vitamin C in general. Vitamin C and glucose fight for the same receptors in your body. So if you don't have as much glucose floating around, your body isn't just going to keep a bunch of vitamin C around for fun. Your body is a highly efficient machine, and it's going to get rid of anything that it's not using. Even when you're eating a regular diet with a ton of carbs in it, your body only needs 10 milligrams of vitamin C per day. That's a very, very small amount. The recommended daily allowance that the government puts on the back of vitamin labels, that's not the minimum amount that you need. That's basically an arbitrary number. And the minimum amount of vitamin C your body needs drops even lower than that 10 milligrams per day when you're not eating any carbs. There is, in fact, vitamin C in animal products. I'm going to pop a list up on the screen right now. These are the animal food items that have the most vitamin C. So you can see that beef spleen has 455% of the recommended daily value in one serving. It's like 3 ounces of spleen, and you don't have to eat that often, every few days or something like that. Liver has some, oysters. There's lots of different sources out there in the animal world that you can get your vitamin C. I've linked a really great article in the description of this video that talks all about vitamin C on the carnivore diet, and I definitely think it's worth a read. It has a lot of really great references in it as well. The next question is, but I've heard my entire life that I need to keep it low fat and I need to eat my fruits and vegetables. Why was I taught that growing up? So this is a really long story. Here's the Cliff Notes version. In the late 50s, President Eisenhower had a massive heart attack, and heart disease was on the rise in the United States. It was a really scary time. So there's lots of theories out there as to, what's causing heart disease. There was one researcher, his name is Ansel Keys, and his hypothesis was that saturated fat is what is causing the increase in heart disease. He never really had a lot of good data. His studies were always flawed, epidemiological, and just very weak, but he was very charismatic, very pushy, and he ended up, getting his viewpoint to the top of the pile, and now that's kind of what's accepted as, known, but that doesn't mean that it's high quality science. If you'd like to learn more about this story, you need to read a couple of books. The first is The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Tay Schultz, and the second is called The Great Plant-Based Con, I've linked both in the description below. If you hate reading or you want to get through these quickly, I have a link to a free month of Audible that you can use to listen to these books. But there's so many details that go into this. It's a really, really, really interesting story. And I think that everybody should know this because the government, their food pyramid, their My Plate or whatever it is now, it's not based on any kind of good science. It's just based on profit, lobbying. There's a little religious twist in there. It's a very interesting story, but just know that the government food recommendations, the dietary guidelines are garbage. Absolute garbage. We should not be eating that much grain in a day. I'm going to link a video from a channel called Evil Food Supply. Excellent, excellent video that goes into the dietary guidelines and just how bullshit they are and how they are not based in science whatsoever. And I'm also going to put a link to Nina Teicholz's Instagram page and also her nonprofit that is working to get actual scientists onto the board, onto the panel that determines what these dietary guidelines are every 5 years. We have another one of these coming up in 2025, and she's been working really, really hard to try to get some low carb actual scientists and doctors onto this panel so we can get a more nuanced discussion on what people should be eating, because I think it was like over half of the people on that panel were vegan and were put there by, vegan food industry, cereal production, Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's really messed up, honestly. And we are only getting sicker as a society, and a lot of that is related to food. This is a really interesting topic. Definitely read those books and check out the resources that I've linked in the description. The next question is, but don't you need carbs to survive? Well, let's talk about that for a second. So there's 3 macronutrients: carbohydrate, protein, and fat. The one macronutrient you absolutely do not need to consume is carbohydrate. You have to consume protein and you have to consume fat, but you do not have to consume carbs. Now, that's not me saying that, don't consume carbs. Of course you can. Humans can eat anything. That's one of the reasons we've survived so long. We're very versatile, but you don't need to consume carbs to live a healthy life. There's also something to be said about the differences between different carbohydrates out there. A fruit or a vegetable is completely different than an ultra-processed food. There's also something to be said about the seasonality of plant materials. We live in a modern world where I can eat strawberries year-round, and that's not how plants were meant to be consumed. And also, the fruits and vegetables that we consume today are nothing like what our ancestors would have eaten. They've been hybridized and bred for the sweetest and largest fruits and vegetables, and they're nothing like what even our ancestors would have eaten a few hundred years ago. I'm going to pop a few examples of this up on the screen. This is a painting of a watermelon from the 1600s, and you can see there's so much more rind, a lot of seeds, a lot less of the flesh that you would be eating, and it was also less sweet. And then you have the modern day watermelon. Look at this thing. It's all of the deliciousness. I love watermelon, but that's not how watermelon exists in nature. Here's a wild banana. This thing is full of seeds. It's so much smaller. It's not as sweet. Here's a wild eggplant. Here is wild corn or maize. Everything that we eat nowadays is nothing like what our ancestors would have eaten. So that's also something to keep in mind. Sure, our ancient ancestors ate some fruits and some vegetables, but they were not eating this stuff every single day, 365 days a year. So that is something that you need to take into account when you are thinking of these things. It's a lot more nuanced than it looks like on the surface. I've linked a great video from a low-carb doctor named Dr. Saiwas in the description below. It's definitely worth a watch, and he goes into so much detail on this topic. I've also linked a video from Zoe Harcum where she talks about macro and micronutrients of food. It's an excellent watch, and it explains this whole question in a bit more detail, but no, you absolutely do not need to consume carbs to survive and thrive. The next question is, can I do the carnivore diet if I'm an athlete? I've heard that I won't have as much energy if I'm not consuming carbs. There are plenty of elite athletes that are consuming a carnivore or an animal-based diet, and I believe the number of these is going to grow and it's going to become more popular as time goes on. One just popped up on my Instagram. His name is Jake Thomas. He just did a fasted marathon and he eats an animal-based diet, so he's an interesting one to check out. If you've been in the carnivore diet world at all, you'll know of Dr. Sean Baker. He's in his 50s and he is just ripped. He does a ton of bodybuilding stuff and breaking records left and right. There's some examples of a rugby player, some CrossFit athletes. And for myself, I'm definitely not an athlete, but I can tell you that my energy levels are really, really good on carnivore. And since December, a few months ago, I've been able to do 4 to 5 days a week of strength training at the gym, in addition to my 2 to 4 mile walks per day. Now, I will say this, in the beginning of carnivore, I did not have the energy to do any kind of strength training or anything like that. I didn't really start to feel good enough to do strength training until I think month 5 or 6. And I think as you become more fat adapted and used to eating this way, your body adjusts. So if you're coming from a really carb heavy diet as an athlete, and then you want to transition over into more of an animal-based or meat-based, I think it's going to take some time to get back to that full power, that full strength that you had before. But know that it will come. It does come. But just know that it is entirely possible. And I think we're going to learn more about this in the next few years as more and more people transition over to this way of eating. The next question, but doesn't red meat cause diabetes? This question popped up a lot over the past few months because of this joke of an epidemiological study that was released by Harvard. The headlines out there were just trying to demonize red meat when in this study, they were calling lasagna and sandwiches red meat. So ridiculous. What actually happens when you eat very, very low carb is your blood glucose levels decline. I've illustrated this over the past 14 months, sharing with you my continuous glucose monitor data along with my blood work. And my fasting glucose went from a 100 down into the low 80s. So it's just kind of ludicrous to think that eating a carnivore diet is going to cause type 2 diabetes. It's quite the opposite. Carnivore is very effective for managing your type 1 and type 2 diabetes. I think it's borderline criminal that the American Diabetes Association is recommending that 45 to 65% of a diabetic's daily calories come from carbs. That's insane. Look at some of these recipes that are on the American Diabetes Association's website. No diabetic should be eating any of these recipes. These are just sugar bombs. And because of this channel, I talk to people every single day that have gone into remission from type 2 diabetes. And I've talked to people with type 1 diabetes that have been able to lower the amount of insulin they use on a daily basis. And they're not dealing with the crazy ups and downs that come with eating a ton of carbs. So no, there is no quality evidence out there to suggest that eating meat causes type 2 diabetes. It's quite the opposite. The next question, can I heal my type 2 diabetes using the carnivore diet? I think we answered this with the last question, but yes, it is entirely possible. Many people have gone into remission from their type 2 diabetes using a carnivore diet. At the very least, you can lower your A1C, lower your fasting glucose levels, and greatly reduce the amount of insulin that you need to take every day. The next question is type 1 diabetes management. We talked about that a little bit. Carnivore is a viable option for people with type 1 as well. I just went to a low-carb metabolic health summit in Boca in January, and the first 2 days of that summit talked about type 1 diabetes management using a low-carb approach. It was very interesting to learn more about it from people with type 1 diabetes. So yes, you can definitely use carnivore in the management of both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. The next question, doesn't eating meat cause cancer or heart disease? This question piggybacks off of the last one. There is absolutely no quality evidence to suggest that eating meat, just eating meat, causes cancer, causes heart disease, anything like that. I'm going to link 3 studies in the description below that are systematic reviews of the highest quality data that is out there. And they conclude that there's very low confidence that eating meat is causing cancer or anything like that. So be sure to give those studies a read. The next question, isn't eating meat bad for your kidneys? What's actually hurting your kidneys is high blood sugar and insulin resistance, and everything that comes along with that. Cutting sugar and ultra-processed foods can take the pressure off of your kidneys. Carnivore lowers blood glucose levels, and we've been eating meat as human beings for millennia. It's only in the past 30 or so years that we've had this explosion in the amount of people needing dialysis. So it's not the meat. I've linked a review of the literature and analysis of routine clinical data from a primary care service that uses a therapeutic ketogenic diet to improve patients' kidney function. They were even able to get some of these people off of dialysis. I've also linked an umbrella review of all of the systematic reviews out there that talk about protein intake and kidney function. The next question is, can I improve my metabolic health with carnivore? Yes, in most cases you can. Just lowering your carb intake and giving your body a break from the constant deluge of glucose is going to be very helpful for your system. Here are some of the improvements I've seen personally over the past 14 months on carnivore. I've lost 42 pounds. I've lowered my fasting glucose from 100 down into the low 80s. My HDL numbers have gone up by 20 points. My oral health has improved. I do not have bleeding gums anymore, and I haven't had to use a breath mint in a year. I do not experience any stomach issues or bloating. I also do not have gas when I'm not eating any kind of plant materials. It was really weird. That was a strange one. My menstrual cramps have almost completely gone away. Now, I don't know if that's because I'm almost 40 or because of carnivore, but I can tell you that I do not experience cramps anymore, and they used to be really bad. I sleep very soundly, and I'm able to stay asleep as long as I don't drink too much water before bed. My mental health has definitely improved. I have depression and anxiety, and most of the time I am feeling much, much better. Of course, this depends a lot on how much sleep I'm getting and my stress levels, but in general, I'm feeling a lot better than I did before carnivore. My energy levels are through the roof most of the time, unless I'm sick or something like that. In the beginning of carnivore, I was a little bit run down, but now that I'm in month 14, I find that I have a lot of energy. I also don't get sick as often as I used to. That was something that I didn't expect, but I just, my immune system must be better because I am not getting all the little colds and flus that everybody else seems to get. And for other people, I talk to people every single day here on YouTube, and people are always sharing their stories with me. So people have been able to get off of their medications, some that they've been on forever, lower the amount of insulin that they have to use, or completely eliminate the need for insulin, losing a ton of weight, improving from autoimmune conditions. It's pretty amazing what you can do with the carnivore diet. The final question is hair loss. Will I lose hair on the carnivore diet? And the answer to this is it's possible. It can happen. It happened to me. I lost some hair around month 4 to month 6, and it's now growing back. But yes, it is a possibility. This is called telogen effluvium. It's when your hair follicles go into a dormant phase after a life stressor, and 3 months later or so, they can fall out. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And this can happen for any kind of serious life stressor. So a divorce, a death in the family, a surgery, major diet change, major weight loss. And those, I think, are the two things that caused mine. I lost 15.5 pounds in 3 months, and I went from eating fruits, vegetables, and lean meats to just eating animal products. And it was quite the shock for my system. So I think ways that you can mitigate this is by making sure you're getting enough protein. So be sure to track your food in the beginning so you can get an idea of how much protein you're getting. And I always say 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So I want to weigh 130 pounds. So I aim for 130 grams of protein per day. This does not happen to everybody, and it does not happen just because of the carnivore diet. So let's, get off that train. It can happen with any kind of diet change, any kind of life stressor. It just has to be stressful enough to cause your hair follicles to go into that dormant phase. So yeah, it can happen, but I wouldn't be super scared of it because it doesn't happen to most people. If I didn't cover one of your metabolic health related carnivore questions, be sure to leave them in the comments below. I'm going to put a link on the screen to my in-depth guide to the carnivore diet. This is like an encyclopedia. It's almost an hour long, but you're going to find everything you need to know about carnivore in that video. Be sure to tune in next week where I finish this series on carnivore questions. We have a lot of miscellaneous questions and a couple of really weird ones that I've fielded in the past, 9 months I've been making videos about the carnivore diet here on YouTube. I get some really weird questions. Can't wait to answer them with you next week. So I will see you then.